I wanted to speak a bit before my reaction to tonight's episode. So a lot of drama has gone down. I know a lot of us were asking for some more action, but I don't think this is exactly what we wanted. I held out some hope that Bay and Day would stay, but one of them is leaving, nominations didn't change, and I know there's that whole rule where you can't say if you're putting someone on the block or for sure what's going to happen. That's a whole production rule. But I feel bad that Bay and Day were led to believe that nobody clued them in beforehand. They were just kind of blindsided, and it created a lot of, things were definitely not handled correctly. And I, of course, am not the right person to talk about it. I had to read up on it, watch clips on it, and get more informed on what happened because I missed it when everything went down on the feeds. But basically, production didn't want Tyler to go. And obviously, I didn't want Tyler to go either, because I do think he's important to get, that Danny, Cody, Nicole side of the house. They need to be targeted, and I'm scared if Tyler left, that probably wouldn't be best for what I want to happen, as well as for Bay and Day. If he really wanted to help them, I think getting somebody else to go on the block that wouldn't be him would have been possibly a better bet. But it didn't go down exactly as I think it should have. Tyler wanted to go home. I think genuinely he wanted to go home, and he does feel bad for Bay and Day and did want to help them. But I do think that was a bit also of an add-on. He was missing home, missing Angela, and his just heart and head weren't in the game. So I think that's the primary reason. And then he also, likes Bay and Day and wants to help their cause. I think that's the wording that was used. And, I don't think, if you're really lying about caring about the cause, Black Lives Matter, and doing it for that purpose, if you're lying about that, then that's just not good. And that just, so I do think he cares, but it just wasn't handled as best as it could have. He could have told them after the fact that, hey guys, I changed my mind, I'm gonna stay, let's try to get somebody else on the block. It could have been done in that way. And yeah, Christmas's game flopped a bit, to say the least, this week. I think the whole Tyler thing did not help. He really complicated her HOH. And yeah, honestly, this week wasn't great, and I don't want to see Bay or Day go home. And I'm still rooting for whichever one of them stays, which looks like it will be Day. I'm rooting for her. And for Ian, I do think that there may be an endurance comp, maybe the wall comp will finally make an appearance, and there are a lot of players that could excel in it. So we'll see. I also found it funny that David was talking about the core, which he thinks is Cody, Ian, Danny, and Nicole. And it's like, no. Like, Ian's obviously not a part of the core. I think he really needs to win this next HOH or he could be in big trouble. I think Day has a chance to fly under the radar and make it further. I don't see her going out next week. I think an easy nomination next week could possibly be David, Kevin, or Ian. So I'm hoping that, there's a big move made and Danny goes on the block or Danny gets backdoored. So I guess we'll see about that. As for who I think is in a really awesome position, Enzo, of course. I think Danny brought up how Cody and Enzo are really close. I think that's probably an issue that they're thinking is more long-term. So Enzo, I think, is going to make it far. Memphis also, his back is all messed up and they're like, whatever, he's not going to do that great in comps, we'll keep him around, and he's just, there. People kind of forget about him. but he's there. I do not like how he was talking bad about Ian yesterday, and Nicole and Danny were just laughing along, which I think is really nasty. Just kind of making fun of him and the rocking back and forth, and Memphis is like, yeah, I just don't like him. I don't want to talk to him. I don't like hanging out with him. And it's just like you guys know that this is all being recorded, right? It, I can't even imagine saying things like that about someone. I'm not surprised, but I'm not happy about it. All right, so for my thoughts and reaction on this episode, to begin with, I never want to hear untouchable ever again. It's said so much on the feeds. It's been an excessively used word this season, and it was in this episode a bunch of times. I think there can be a really good, or I guess you can say tragically ending drinking game that has to do with untouchable. It's just a lot. I don't think there was a mention. Did they say that Christmas mentioned that Ian was her untouchable this episode? I know at the end of the veto ceremony, you know, that was kind of discussed, but not Ian's name specifically. It might have been brought up, but yeah. So I think this episode also showed that there's further proof that Nicole's not really on board to target Tyler. Danny is going to be gunning for him, wants him out, but Nicole's just not there yet. So when picking the veto players, you could tell Ian did not want to be picked. And just this whole choice of players is pretty tragic. I mean, we're watching it, knowing what's going on. So seeing Danny and Nicole get picked, knowing that they have been mentioning putting Day and Bay on the block and targeting Bay. So it's just like very bites teeth moment. They don't want to play. They want Day to stay, but, you know, they don't want to show those cards, obviously, and they don't want to have to be put in that position. The veto picks were actually super awkward. Just Day picking Danny and Bay picking Ian. It was just very weird. I felt uncomfortable watching it. You can tell that they were just like, okay. It's like fake excitement. This comp gave me a major throwback to BB19, and I'm sure for you guys as well. And I hated this comp in BB19. When Christmas won this, I was miserable. Obviously, I think I've mentioned this before, but not a fan of BB19. Wasn't my favorite, and I was pretty sad, upset for most of it. That was one of the worst comps I've ever seen, just seeing everyone just throw it like that. It's not what BB's about. It's not what we like watching. It's not what I like watching, at least. Watching Day false start immediately, first one out, was so painful to watch. Of course, I already knew about it, but watching it is a new level of hurt. I'm rooting for Day, and I'm hoping after this week, she's able to glide on through and win some stuff and just do really well. I want her to succeed. I've always wanted her to succeed in every season she's been on, and the cards really haven't been in her favor. And this time around, I don't know, but I think she has a good chance of gliding on through, considering that there are targets in the house and people wanting to gun for these targets. It also hurt to see Bailey go out right after Day. Yeah, I think at that point everybody is just like, yeah, whatever. I don't like this math thing. I would suck at it, and I know I would false start on it. I think the more you have on the line, the more anxious you are about it, and the more jumpy you are, so it makes it way more difficult. I mentioned in a previous video wondering how David would do as a host. There wasn't much for him to do. This is a pretty underwhelming comp. There's not really much for the host to do, nothing really all that interesting, but yeah, David got to host a comp, so good for him. He won a power. Yeah, I think in the feeds there was a conversation between him and Tyler, and he was questioning Tyler about having a power, and he was like, I know you have it, don't lie, whatever. And it's funny because David actually is the one that has it, and Tyler's like, I swear I don't have a power. I've seen the house guests mention thinking that Tyler has a power and wanting to flush it out. There's mention of Kevin having a power, wanting to flesh it out, David having a power. So I guess we'll see. I think Bay actually caught on to David having a power and then dropped it. She was definitely on the right track. I liked seeing Nicole give Day the money. I've seen other people mention that it was for personal gain. She was getting something out of it. And yes, but it was still nice to see Day get that money. And Nicole, you know, it's a BB staple of hers to have a costume. So she got her costume for the season and it looks super uncomfortable. I would hate to be wearing this costume. Janelle's was way better. Yesterday, Cody was told that his grandfather passed away and he was kind of holding it to himself and struggling a bit, and that's really sad. I can't even imagine what that would be like, being in the house and being told that information. Must be so difficult. I think even during these times, it must be so hard to be away from your family and thinking what could go wrong, what if something happens and you're not aware of it. You know, that would be really hard for me, and that unknown aspect of it, I'm sure it's very rough, and I'm sure he apparently was very close to his grandfather, so that's really sad. So I was wondering if they would show the whole Tyler wanting to go home, wanting to be put on the block, and wanting Bay and Day to go far, that whole situation. And they did. I guess they kind of had to, because I mean, it's a big thing that happened. I was wondering how they would portray it not happening, and they went the route of Tyler finding out that Bay is still gunning for him. There's still beef between them, and him deciding, well, you know what, I don't want to go, and Christmas not wanting to put him on the block because that's her ally. She doesn't want to take him out on her HOH. She mentioned that in the DR too, like, you got to do your own dirty work. I'm not taking you out on my HOH. That's not fair. Which, I mean, yeah, he would totally be screwing over her HOH. So this is the way they went. And yeah, I think if you don't know what went on in the feeds, what went on behind the scenes, it can be a bit confusing what went on here. I definitely think, like I said earlier, it could have been handled a lot better. I think Bay and Day should have been told beforehand, and I think it should have been told to them that Tyler changed his mind, or, you know, something around the lines like that, because that really sucks to get your hopes up high and it be for nothing. I thought it was really funny when the veto ceremony happened. Christmas didn't use a veto, and Bailey was like, share who you said your untouchable was, and Christmas was like, nope. So awk. And then the whole DR sessions that they played after that, Bay calling Tyler a snake and Christmas a sheep. Yeah, so I guess we'll see how this HOH plays out. Let me know your thoughts on the episode, of everything that has gone on as well. And who do you want to win HOH, and what do you want to happen this next week, and, you know, what do you expect to happen? So yeah, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe.